spend 5 minutes giving an introduction. I'm not going to do that because this gentleman actually does not need no introduction, at least in this room for sure. A man who's taken his small dream and led it into becoming the world's largest NGO. Sir Fazle Hasan Abed in conversation next. Can I request Professor Ferhat Anwar, the Chief Advisor of Bangladesh Brand Forum, who will be will be in conversation with Sir Abed to escort him onto the stage.
So thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me in this leadership summit. It's a wonderful opportunity for me to say a few words with the leaders who are present here today.
Honor is ours, sir.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sure that Sir Abed does not require any introduction, and all of us are aware of the fact that BRAC is presently the largest NGO in the world, and it has happened in a country which many of us consider to be basically followers, not leaders, but he's one person who has done it. Sir Abed, if just a brief on his career, actually he started off with Shell Oil long back, and it was only during the 70s, after the 70s cyclone, where many of us probably may not be aware, more than 300,000 people actually were killed. And that is when he decided, with some of his friends, to start off with a project called HELP, to provide relief and rehabilitation. And also, of course, from then onwards, he has been in this particular effort. So if I may ask, Sir Abed, at that particular moment, you definitely had a purpose. What was the primary purpose which actually was the driving force for coming in and moving out from a comfortable position to moving into a very challenging sort of an act? What made you do that?
There are two things that happened in my life which was very crucial in changing my way of my life, pattern of my life. I used to be a business person, an executive of Shell Oil Company. In November 1970, there was a cyclone which killed 300,000 people in Bangladesh. This was the biggest cyclone, biggest natural disasters that was ever experienced in this country. It was one of the biggest in the world. So that cyclone, of course, I was working for Shell Oil in Chittagong, and I had an opportunity to go and see the ravages of cyclone, the bodies strewn all over the place. And then it made me think that what the kind of life I lead has no meaning at all in confronting the kind of deaths and destruction from a cyclone which sort of kills human life in such enormity. So the enormity of the situation has led me to think that my life didn't really have much of a meaning in confronting this kind of situation. So I started thinking about helping the poor, because it's the poor people who died. It is not the well-to-do who had a building to live in. These people were protected, but poor people whose homes were made of mud and straw, these are the people whose houses were blown away, and they are the ones who were killed. So something about serving the people who are disadvantaged, who didn't have much, came into my thinking process. Then, of course, what happened is the Bangladesh Liberation Movement, or Liberation War started. And then we wanted to help the Liberation War in an effective way. So I went to London and started organizing an organization called Action Bangladesh to try and mobilize public opinion for Bangladesh's Liberation War. So that was in London, and so we worked throughout Europe, trying to create opinions for Bangladesh's Liberation War. So Fortunately, of course, Bangladesh's liberation war didn't last very long, and we didn't have to do much, prolonged periods of struggle. And Bangladesh became independent in December 1971. And of course, 10 million refugees started flowing back into Bangladesh. And the need for relief and rehabilitation for all these people who are coming back from India was paramount. So I sold my flat in London, and with the money that I gathered from there, I started an organization called Bangladesh Rehabilitation Assistance Committee, called BRAC, and started working in a remote corner of Bangladesh in Sunamganj district, in a place called Shalla Thana of Sunamganj district. And that's where I started, in a small relief and rehabilitation program. But then, of course, what happened is that you realize that relief and rehabilitation doesn't solve problems of your country. You realize that the people are poor, and you can go away, but the people remain poor and vulnerable. And then we decided that in order to bring about poverty alleviation, getting people a decent living, so poverty is not just a one-dimensional syndrome. It's not just lack of income and employment. It is not it is also lack of healthcare, opportunities for education. So all kinds of things constitute poverty. Local, large, sort of deprivations of different kinds are poverty. So poverty alleviation didn't really just mean how to increase income, but how to also create opportunities for people to have healthcare, better nutrition, better educational opportunities. All kinds of opportunities needed to be created in order to help people out of poverty. So we decided to really work on poverty in Bangladesh. And then also we realized that poverty cannot be removed in one project or one area in isolation. It has to be a long-term program of working on different dimensions of poverty, and then probably we can have some impact on poverty. So that's what we committed ourselves for a long haul, to try and get Bangladesh out of extreme poverty as we could do. So the struggle for poverty alleviation, creating opportunities for people, started 42 years ago, and it still continues. And we have not really got Bangladesh out of poverty yet, and we hope that in course of time that Bangladesh will be out of poverty, but then we are still in the process of working on it.
But while you were doing that, of course, we can come up and we are proudly seeing that BRAC is presently the largest NGO in the world. And this growth that we see, what did you do rightly that this particular growth actually took place? And not only are you operating within Bangladesh, but also outside of Bangladesh. You are operating even in Afghanistan. Right. So how did this growth actually took place?
Well, I realized that remaining small and beautiful as an organization will not serve our people well. We wanted to be big and impactful. Mm-hmm. So small organizations cannot have an impact on poverty. It has to be a large organization. It has to work on many different aspects of poverty. Average Bangladeshi women used to produce 6.4 children. So if women continue to produce 6.4 children, then of course and continue to do so, then of course Bangladesh's population would be so high, and poverty alleviation would be very, very difficult. So obviously one had to work on also on issues like family planning, reproductive health, and things like that. When we worked on family planning, we realized that unless there is unless women are sure of the survival of their existing children, they will continue to produce more children. So child survival was important also. So the children who were born, if they didn't survive, then of course they will have more children. So all kinds of things one had to work in. So I realized, for example, in 1979, it was the International Year of the Child. And I looked at what was the child mortality rate. Infant mortality rate, in other words, in the first year of life, children's death was 135 per thousand. First 5 years of life, 252 children died before their 5th birthday. So quarter of our children died before their 5th birthday. So unless our children survived during these first 5 years, then of course people will continue to have more children and so on. So child survival was one area that we worked on throughout 1980s, trying to get the biggest killer of children, of course, was diarrhea. So how to get children survive during diarrhea, that was the main issue on which we worked throughout the 80s. Going from house to house, teaching mothers how to make oral rehydration fluid at home with salt, sugar, and water. We call it Robin Gooder saline. The saline that was, so we used to teach mothers from house to house. So we visited 13 million households in Bangladesh, teach mothers one-to-one how to make oral rehydration fluid at home and how to administer it to children. And that had a big impact on child survival in terms of cutting down diarrheal mortality. And then, of course, we came out with sachets of oral rehydration salts, and then, of course, it is now available throughout the country. And Bangladesh has got the highest use of oral rehydration in the world because of the work that we did in the 1980s. And as a result of which, child mortality from diarrhea has almost vanished from Bangladesh. There is, then of course we worked on other things like immunization. Government took up half the country, and we took up almost 184 thanas of Bangladesh to do immunization of children. So from 1986, just 2% of Bangladesh's children were immunized in 1986, and it went up to 70% in 1990 because we worked together with the government to try and get every children immunized. Now, of course, the immunization rate in Bangladesh is more than 95%. Government does it because we work together and we have developed a whole system of immunization of children. And because of that, today, Bangladesh's life expectancy at birth is higher than India's. Yes. It is 69 because child mortality has diminished, and also mortality from even adult mortality is less in Bangladesh than in India. Mm-hmm. So there has been quite a lot of significant achievements in Bangladesh in terms of health status of our people. So this has been recently, of course, published by Lancet, showing that how Bangladesh has progressed in health status in this country. And they compared it with this kind of change that occurred after the Meiji Restoration in Japan in the 19th century. And they said that this is the breakneck speed at which Japan progressed in the 19th century. Bangladesh has shown this kind of progress in health improvement in the last 30 years. So this, I consider that we work together with the government, so it was not singly BRAC has done it or anything like that. It is a combination of work between government and NGOs and private sector, who have also contributed to greatly to improved health status of our people.
So it does become even more challenging when you're saying that, of course, development, unlike any other corporate activity, you are working not only with yourself, but also working with the others.
Yes.
And you're working throughout the country in God only knows how many different sectors. So how do you bring in your people under the same umbrella, the thought process? Where does this particular vision come in?
Let let me finish that. You asked me about growth.
Yes.
What happened to grow? How did we grow? So when we went to every household in Bangladesh to teach mothers how to make oral rehydration fluid, entire Bangladesh became the backyard of our program, and we could go to every household. And so we expanded all our program throughout the country. Our microfinance program became national program. Our health program became a national program. So whatever we did, we tried to first make it effective, then efficient, then we expanded our program throughout the nation. And then it's only when you have effective programs run in a scale, then it can have an impact. So I think our impact on our health status, our agricultural development, all kinds of development, even in education, for example, we have progressed quite a bit. Because of the work that we have done in a large scale, we have been able to contribute to an improvement in any of all these fields.
Sir Abed, one thing, I mean, of course, we have seen that wherever you've gone, you've ensured that people at even the grassroots level, they become your partners. What language do you speak with them? How do you integrate all of these people together under the same umbrella? What is the magic?
The magic, there's no magic as such, in the sense that I think our staff we train them first, of course. So it's a shared value that we are committed to a particular purpose, a vision of Bangladesh that we want to see implemented. A vision so there is a vision and a mission that we have in our organization. And we have certain values which we value very much, and we want to transmit this value to our staff. So this is, I mean, when you talk about the leadership, how do you create new leaders in your organization? And an organization with 100,000 staff or more, how does it run without leaders? It is not one leader, me, who is running BRAC. There are multiple leaders in different levels of BRAC. So it's the directors, then the managers, program coordinators, and so on. They are all leaders. They are not asking for orders from above to do their thing, do what they do. They take leadership. They take the authority and responsibility are all delegated to them. So it's not just the responsibility to do certain work, but also the commensurate authority is also given to the staff to be able to do what he does. So a decision is taken at the lowest possible level in BRAC and not at the highest possible level. Okay. So the decision where it should be taken, it should be at the highest level. The general was talking about decisions taken at the field level, yes, and not asking for orders from above to be able to do certain things. It's the same thing in BRAC. Decisions are taken at the lowest possible level, and not at the highest possible level.
The other thing which we have seen, I mean, from outside, of course, and also from inside, that BRAC, unlike many other NGOs, they had decided from the very beginning to be dependent on themselves, to come up with sort of projects which would self-finance and take BRAC forward. Right. So why did that happen? What made you move into a different sort of approach compared to the typical NGO activities that we saw in the country?
You know, the other day I was talking with the head of eBay, eBay's founder, Pierre Omidia. And Pierre told me that he says that he wants to give all his money. He's got about $15, $20 billion worth of person. So he wants to, he said that I could give most of the money in the foundation and then it could be given out in charity and so on. But he thinks that he can do a lot of good also in investing in businesses, not just foundations. So he doesn't call his Omidyar Foundation, he called his enterprise Omidyar Network, where he not only gives grants, but also he gives, he invests. So I also think that it's not only charitable work does good for people, sometimes businesses also can do good for people. For example, when I set up Arong in 1978, it was intended to help poor people or poor artisans to have an access to a market. And that's what motivated me to set up Arong as a business. If it succeeded, of course, then it will become a business. Otherwise, it will just help poor people to have access to a market. But then if it didn't succeed, then it will remain small. But because it succeeded, it became quite large now. So you find 10 or 15 shops in Dhaka itself, and there are other shops in other places. And we have got about 500 crore taka revenue from Arong now, and it makes about 70, 80 crore taka profit. But so it's become a business, but it was intended to help poor people to have access to a market. So the idea was not just to make profit, because after all, when you talk about a business, the purpose of a business is an enterprise which is created with a view to making a profit. But it was not so. It was an enterprise which was created to help poor people have access to a market. So so this is what I call a social business, social enterprise. What Professor Yunus talks about social business, I call about social enterprise, and we did it in 1978 in Arong. So that's what. So just helping people in terms of training in crafts and things like that. Of course, you can do that, and we did that. But we also wanted to have a business so that it survives and continues to flourish. And like that, for example, we have done many other businesses. For example, we started microfinance. We started giving loans to women. And we found that 300,000 women among 3 million borrowers that we had at the time, actually we invested money in a kitchen farm, in a vegetable garden. So, but then we found that many of them didn't make much profit. Why? Our research found that they didn't have good quality seeds. High quality vegetable seeds were not available in Bangladesh to buy from the market. So we went into business. BRAC went into business of multiplying high quality vegetable seeds. The vegetable seed multiplication became our business, initially with vegetables. And then, of course, we went into maize seeds. We went into a joint venture with Pacific Seeds of Australia to produce hybrid maize seeds in Bangladesh so that poultry feed could be produced. So maize production now is almost 1 million tons. We started it with bringing in seeds from outside. And we then went into a joint venture with China to produce hybrid rice seeds. So BRAC now today is one of the largest seed producer in Bangladesh. So it is a business which is created with a view to helping agriculture and productivity of poor people to be able to earn more money. But then, as a business, it succeeded. And it is now a flourishing business which is helping the Bangladesh's agricultural productivity in the country.
I mean, it has been very interesting because, again, unlike most of the NGOs who are more focused in terms of development, and I still remember that you started off with the outreach project, which was typical development approach, and then you moved out from that. And you did establish a very strong research sort of a wing. Was it sort of what? Was it reactive, or you always knew that where you wanted to go through research? What prompted you to move into research?
Research is very important, thing. We are the only organization, I think, among non-profit organizations who considered, who started research on the third year of our existence in 1975. We started a research department. The idea was that we need to understand the dynamics of poverty in our society and address these dynamics properly. So we needed to understand the situations of poverty in Bangladesh and how it operates. So this was one. Secondly, we also wanted to know the kind of programs we did. Are we successful? Are we being effective? So we wanted to know, have a monitoring department, monitoring and evaluation department to find out whether or not the programs we are doing is successful or not. So research and evaluation department became a very important department for us so that we knew exactly how we are doing in the field. And we also wanted to say evidence-based. We wanted to grow on the question, we wanted to have evidence of success. Without evidence, we didn't want to proceed with something without finding out exactly what we are doing and so on. So, and that's the reason why we had research. The program that I have told you about, oral dehydration therapy, let me tell you very quickly a story about how this particular program was helped by research, continuous research. When we deployed our workers, oral dehydration workers, to go from house to house and teach mothers how to make oral dehydration fluid at home. When 30,000 households was completed, we sent out a group of monitors to find out what percentage of these 30,000 households actually used oral dehydration therapy when there was diarrhea in the household. We found, for example, only 6% of the household was using oral dehydration therapy, and the other 94% didn't. So, but we very quickly found out that our oral dehydration workers themselves did not believe in oral dehydration therapy themselves. So they didn't know, they didn't have the confidence in its efficacy of this therapy. So when the teacher don't believe in something, obviously they don't transmit it effectively. So we came back, we retrained our workers. We brought them to ICDDRB, at that time called a research lab, to show how actually oral dehydration works in the body and so on. So after training, they went back again, and they started going to households again, and another 30,000 households were visited, and they were taught. And we again sent out a group of monitors to find out what percentage of the households were actually used oral dehydration. But we found out, for example, that only 19% was using oral dehydration after retraining of our staff. So then, of course, we were very unhappy as to why this happened. And so we sent out another group of anthropologists this time to find out, to actually interview those households who didn't use oral dehydration therapy and why they didn't. And the anthropologists came out with the answer that the reason they didn't use oral dehydration is because the men in the household were dissuading them from doing so. So then we came to the conclusion that obviously the program design was wrong. We didn't include men at all in the program design. It was women who were oral dehydration workers. They will go to household and taught women. So men were completely ignored from our program design. So once we realized that the men was completely ignored, and then of course they were a hindrance to women using oral dehydration, then we redesigned the program. So every village we went to, then we organized first a men's meeting of all the men. They will and tell them exactly what we are doing, teaching their women and how oral dehydration actually would save their children if they're properly used, and so on. And then we went into mosques, we went into marketplaces, everywhere we talked with men, And then oral rehydration program started becoming used in the household. And we followed it up with radio and television spots throughout the nation. So, and then it became something everybody used. So that's how our monitoring, each time we did monitoring, we found out whether the program was effective. In order to make it effective, we had to work for a whole year to make the program effective.
So the research was basically...
So research was contributing to this. If we didn't have a research department, we would have probably had a very 6% or 7% use rate, and we would have wasted our resources going from house to house teaching mothers, but it wouldn't have a kind of impact we have had because we had the research.
The research was
Essential.
The other thing that we know that you started off exports from our own during the early 80s, but with the development effort, it took you quite some time. And in fact, Steve Jobs once asked you, what took you so long to actually move out from Bangladesh, particularly with regard to your development efforts? You're presently operating in 11 countries and alhamdulillah doing pretty good. So what took you so long?
Steve Jobs, you see, I had dinner with Steve Jobs and his wife, Lorraine Jobs. And Steve says to me, why did it take you 30 years to come out of Bangladesh? So I said, I never thought of coming out of Bangladesh. I thought all my life I'll work in Bangladesh and try and get Bangladesh out of poverty. But then what happened is a situation which reminded me of early years of Bangladesh, when 10 million refugees started coming back to Bangladesh. I saw in Afghanistan in 2002, 3 million refugees were going back from Pakistan and Iran into Afghanistan. And it reminded me of the time that I started BRAC. So I said maybe BRAC could go to Afghanistan and start working with the refugees, resettling, and then do development afterwards. So we went into Afghanistan. So it's sort of trying to help a country in difficulties. The same kind of thing we did in Bangladesh. So this is how we went into Afghanistan. But then when we went into Afghanistan and we started microfinance, we started organizing people, providing services of different kinds. We found that all of them, all the things that we do in Bangladesh is quite effective in a poverty situation in Afghanistan too. We thought that something that we have done in Bangladesh may not work in another culture. But we saw that many of these things actually work in another culture too. But we had to make certain small changes. What are the small changes? Changes are cultural changes. For example, in Afghan women, if you want to lend money to women, you can't send a man to be your loan officer who will distribute loans. For example, in Bangladesh, or at least more than 60% of our loan officers are men, not women. In Afghanistan, it has to be all women. So we recruited women as loan officers rather than men, and who had access to women. So these are the small changes that we made in Afghanistan in terms of implementing our program. And they were just as successful as it is in Bangladesh.
What about the first world? I mean, you've also been working in the first world. So has there been any, do you come about with different strategies there, or it's again the same?
No, you mean
UK, you are operating in UK as well
no,
as in the
we
US?
are operating in UK. The UK and the USA, we have got two offices, BRAC USA and BRAC UK. Both of them are basically fundraising organizations. So they are not, we are not really working in the UK and United States in terms of development. We are really fundraising organizations. In the UK, we have tried with the Bangladeshi population in East London to try and work with them a little bit in terms of financial literacy and things like that. And we have done some work, but not very much. Our focus still remains the poorest countries of Africa and Asia. So we are working in 10 countries outside Bangladesh, 5 in Africa, 5 in Asia, 4 in Asia, and in Haiti. the Caribbean.
So it apparently seems that innovation has been something which is, well, embedded in your leadership per se. And wherever you're going, I mean, you not only have you innovated various products, but also you have been also innovating the various ways that you've been approaching the poor people for elevating poverty. So is innovation part and parcel of the trait within the organization, or do you train people up? What do you do?
No, but innovation is something that one has to really try and develop things which sort of works in our particular culture. For example, when we started looking at Bangladesh's education in 1980s, we found that only 60% of our children actually were enrolling in primary schools. 40% never enrolled. And those 60% which enrolled, the large numbers dropped out of primary school system. So as a result, the whole primary school, efficiency of primary schools was very low in terms of keeping children. There was a lot of waste. And secondly, the quality of education was bad also. So we had to come out with an educational program which is effective and provided children with quality education, and the children dropout was minimal. So we started a one-teacher school system. A teacher who will take children, 30 children in a class, and provide quality education. We'll train the teacher ourselves, and we will provide supervision of the teacher twice a week, and we retrain the teacher all the time. And so the quality of primary education that we started with one teacher schools was a kind of innovation to meet the needs of children in primary, poor children in primary schools. But then so BRAC has been a laboratory for a lot of different kinds of innovation which has worked in Bangladesh and is now working in other countries also.
So you encourage your people within the organization to innovate and, of course, try out new things.
This is a continuous search for new ideas and new ways of working, which is going to be effective in a situation. So when we work in Haiti, we try and see whether we could also plant trees in the denuded hills of Haiti. So there's a lot of innovative programs we are developing in these countries also.
Well, there's something which, one of our sort of a question I've just received from Mr. Shahid Mohammad Qazi, and him and I also had this particular question here, that what would you consider to be your major challenges that you faced while you have been, I mean, this long path that you've traveled? What were your major challenges?
Main challenges? Well, one challenge, of course, is raising money. There is a limited amount of resources available to development organizations. But we have been fairly successful in raising money. In Bangladesh, we didn't have much problem. Because Bangladesh, we have been able to show results, and on the basis of results, donors come in and say that, all right, we are ready to fund you to do this or that or the other. But in countries where we are new, for example, in Tanzania, Uganda, Southern Sudan, Liberia, Sierra Leone, we are new there. We have not really proven ourselves there. Mm-hmm. So it takes so the main challenge is to how to get donors to respond to the needs of poverty in these countries and funding. So the funding is a problem in new countries that we go. Mm-hmm. So, but I hope that in course of time, once we have shown that the money that they have invested has shown results, then we will be able to attract more funding. In Bangladesh, we have no problems in attracting funding because the donors want to fund us, and whatever we can do, we can get funding for it.
So funding primarily. Would you consider getting the right type of people to work for?
Of course, right type of people has always been the biggest problem. Mm-hmm. But then once people come into BRAC, and we have chosen a group of people to come and work in BRAC, we do we do provide the opportunity for them to grow, firstly. Secondly, we do invest a lot of money in training. The General was talking about training and skills development and investing in people. We do the same. Without that, an organization cannot be effective and efficient and create lots of leaders. And we have always also invested not only money in training in-house in BRAC itself, but also we have sent out people to do their MSc, their MA, their PhDs and so on in other countries. So large numbers of BRAC staff have gone abroad to do higher education in other great universities like Harvard and Princeton and London School of Economics and so on, and did their PhDs, MScs and so on. So and every year we send out about a dozen people to abroad for higher education. So this has been an attractive thing for leaders to have access to all kinds of high quality education opportunity.
Sir Abed, there's another question from Farzana Lisa, and she's coming and she's saying, of course, during the right after independence, things were different. And during the early 70s, we had huge poverty. It was a war-ravaged country, so on and so forth. Today, Bangladesh is different, definitely. So what are today's challenges, and how do you think a development organization like yourself can help Bangladesh go forward?
Today's challenges are obviously different. For example, let me say that maternal mortality in 1970s was 800 per 100,000 births. It has now come down to 150 per 100,000 births. So 800 to 150 has been a decline of maternal mortality. And I think that at this moment, we have probably reached the limit of what we can do with the kind of manpower, health manpower we have. Maternal mortality cannot be brought down further unless we can train a group of midwives, 3-year trained midwives in the university level, and then deploy them in the country. Let's say 10,000 midwives in 5,000 unions, so 2 per union in Bangladesh, because most of the birth still takes place in the house, not in the hospitals. So if you can have midwives who can provide quality care service, birth attendants, then we can bring down maybe the maternal mortality rate for 150 to 30. 30 would be like Sri Lanka's level. But if you want to bring it down to Norway's level, which is 3, three women die per 100,000 in childbirth, then every mother has to go to a hospital for childbirth, and it will be required, she will require an anesthetist and an obstetrician to be looking after her. If you have that, and that you can only have when you have $30,000 per capita income, when every person can go to a hospital and have a baby. So there are stages of development.
So you're basically
so I think
up the ladder.
So we are moving up the ladder. So what BRAC University is now trying to do is to train these midwives, 3-year training, and giving them a diploma in midwifery. So if we can develop 10,000 midwives, then of course maternal mortality can come down further to about 30. So these are the differences of programming that we are thinking of doing. So what we did earlier on is not quite sufficient at this time. At this time we will be doing something else.
So you had, for example, the Turks during those days,
right,
and you moved up the ladder, and now you've set up universities. So
right,
that is in a planned effort. You're taking the service delivery level at a higher level.
Absolutely.
The other thing that people are, there's another question which came in, and they were saying, Mr. Shahid Mohammad Qazi was asking, no, hold on a minute, this was Faiz Chaudhry, and he was saying that you have suggested, and even General here has suggested, that leadership actually starts at the bottom as well. So how do you pick leaders up from the bottom when they move upward? What do you do? How do you pick people up?
Well, they emerge to some extent. I mean, emerge in the sense that they take leadership role at a higher level, and you can see that they can be promoted to the next level. So the promotion, of course, our HR department has to be very good to identify the people who can go to the higher level. And then also you can help them further by providing them better education, better training, and so on. So higher level of leadership can be taken by them. The leadership, you wanted to ask me the question, what is the definition of a leader?
Yes, I wanted
leadership. Now, Gandhi's definition of leadership was quite different. He said, there goes my people. I must follow them, for I am their leader. What he meant by that is that we think of leader always leading and the others are following. Gandhi was saying that I must follow my people, for I am their leader, because he wanted to, and he was going to lead people to he wanted to find out the aspiration of his people. And he wanted to lead from behind with and understand the aspiration of his people, where these people are going. There goes my people, I must follow them. He follows their aspirations to be a leader. So this is his definition of leadership. But leadership, of course, the general has also defined leadership quite well.
So without looking at the ground level or absolutely at the lower level, you wouldn't be able to know where to move. So you continuously observe them as well.
That's right.
That is the idea.
That's right. That's the idea.
Sir Abed, another thing, and again, this is something which one of our participants here has also asked Zakir Ahmed, that if you were to rethink in terms of some of your strategies, some of the areas where you have not been very successful, which are those areas where you think that you would have worked differently?
Worked differently?
Yeah, or thought you would have worked differently or taken a different sort of course of action, where you don't think that you've been very successful in some of the areas.
I wouldn't say that I have not been successful, but I would say that there are lots of unfinished agenda.
Okay.
Unfinished agenda in the sense that high school education, we have worked on primary education. We haven't really worked on high school or on secondary education. The secondary education is so crucial. Of course, primary education is very crucial too. I mean, everybody needs to go to school. This is, of course, given. But in order to be able to compete in the global economy of the future, Bangladesh would need to have high school graduates as at least high school education, and that is in Bangladesh. It's an unfinished agenda in the sense that we have not really worked on high school education in a significant way to improve the quality of education in our country, because most children still memorize and don't learn to think, and that's what I think is Bangladesh's need for the future, is be high quality education where children are allowed to or given opportunities to think, not memorize, and are assessed on the basis of what they can do themselves rather than what they can parrot out in terms of memorization.
So, Abed, the other question, I mean, it is coming in. I mean, quite a few of them have been asking. What is your opinion with regard to future of, say, microcredit in this country? What do we do? The future of microcredit.
Microcredit.
So, how should we deal with that? What is the future of microcredit in Bangladesh?
Microcredit has done quite well in Bangladesh in the sense that large numbers of people have access to money, and some people have benefited from it tremendously, and some people hasn't really benefited much. I mean, some are still have not benefited much in the sense that in any business you find that there is a 15, 20 business started. Some business do well, some business don't do so well. And I'm sure that the same thing happened in microfinance too. Not everybody has benefited. but large numbers of people did benefit from access to credit. So this is one. The future of microcredit is going to be, I think, also very technology driven. For example, now we have got in BRAC Bank, we have got Bcash.
Yes.
The Bcash is now mainly used for transferring funds from one place to another. A garment industry worker can transfer her 500 taka that she sends to her home through Bcash without any problem. But I think what is going to happen is that microcredit, if she wants, for example, to borrow 5,000 taka to send to her in a particular need for her family, she should be able to also borrow from Bcash.
From Bcash.
Because the BRAC Bank is behind it, 5,000 taka, and then pay monthly 500 taka a month and pay it off in 10 months. So this kind of thing would be technologically driven, and it will be easy to also monitor and manage. So this is the kind of things I see microfinance becoming in course of time, and not at this moment what we do, group-based microfinance, going to a village, collect money and so on. This will probably be, technology will take over this easily,
gradually.
And it might be also very cheap to do it.
Sir Abed, thank you so much. But before you end, I would like you to tell the audience here, the future leaders that we have here amongst our audience, what should we, Bangladeshi leaders sitting here, do to take Bangladesh into the next level? Could you give some advice to the leaders here?
Well, I don't presume to wish to do advice to anybody. But all I say to people in Bangladesh, particularly BRAC staff and so on, whatever you do the best possible way you can. Be an ethical leader. Quality is very important. Do a high quality job. Whatever you do it at the highest quality possible, and be committed and dedicated to the tasks that you do. So do a good job of whatever you do. It is not that you have to be in a particular position in order to help Bangladesh. Whatever position you have, you can help Bangladesh by doing a good job of it. So if you are a garment manufacturer, do a good job of it. Be an ethical garment manufacturer. Look after your staff, pay them well, and also deliver your goods at the right time to satisfy your buyers. So all kinds of things you have to do in order to be good. So what I'm saying is that be the best you can in your profession, in your job.
Well, thank you, Sir Abed, for your time. Thank you so very much for being with us, and we hope to see you even more involved in other activities within the country. You have been our inspiration, and we hope to learn more from you and take this nation forward. Thank you so much, Sir Abed.
If I could request the professor to give a token of appreciation to Sir Abed from us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure again after a long, long time.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sure there are many more speakers to come. We have got a 20-minute snack break right now, sponsored by Bangladesh Edible Oil Limited. If you could sort of out in the foyer, we've served. But if you can be back in 20 minutes, we're running about slightly behind time. Thank you very much.
That melts your heart. Love lingers. You'll be craving for more. Olive oil, pure love for body and soul. Pure Mediterranean. Olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. Olive oil.
এটা কি?
রূপচাঁদা খাঁটি সরিষার তেল।
এই তেলের দানা ভালো?
শুধু দানা নিয়ে খুঁতখুত করলে হইব? ভালো দানা সঠিক আর্দ্রতা এবং তাপমাত্রা মজুত করাও জরুরি। এরপর অভিজ্ঞ ওস্তাদ লাগে সেই দানা ভাঙাইতে।
ওস্তাদের কাজ কি?
ভালো ওস্তাদি পারে তেঁতুল কাঠের ঘানিতে হালাল প্রক্রিয়ায় তেল ভাঙাইয়া বৈজ্ঞানিক মাত্রার প্রাকৃতিক ঝাঁজ বজায় রাখতে। ট্রায়াল স্কেলে পরিমাপকৃত।
study tours, field trips, forums, debates, cultural programs, and social projects.
Co-curricular activities are not limited to just the clubs. There is a campus newspaper and radio station. There is also the ULAB TV. All three run entirely by the students. The university also has apprenticeship programs in film and photography. While the research centers organize seminars, forums, and international conferences, ULAB endeavors to provide its students the best services.